Hey, you guys, welcome back to Coaching for Coaches. My name is Denise Walsh, and in this podcast, my goal is to help you be the coach your client needs and build a thriving business along the way. In our next episode, we're talking to a local lady here. She's in the Grand Rapids area. She is the daughter of two loving parents who never saw the day coming when she would retreat into the basement of their home and try to hurt herself. She was only 10 at the time. The night before, she had determined that she just wasn't pretty enough. And maybe if she took a pair of scissors to her hair, she could change things up. At least people would notice her trying. It backfired, of course, sparking a comment from her dad, who then walked out the door expecting her to join him a bit later at the hardware store. Instead, she dusted off a hunting rifle, pointed it at her chest, and fired. It missed her heart by inches. Against all odds, she survived. A story in the town paper reported this as an accidental shooting, but she knew better. And as suicide and self harm became talked about more openly, she began to share the truth, just a little at a time. Today, she walks on stage looking to share her story with whoever it might help. She figured she'd educate a few people along the way. What she didn't expect is that she's learning just as much about how many people are hurting and that suicide is too often swept under the rug, and that together we can prevent it. With self deprecating humor, she only has 9 toes. We're going to have to hear that story. And an infectious laugh that reveals a joyful heart. She traded her corporate job for a microphone and a place to make a stand. So, big welcome to Shandy Longcore.
Thank you, Denise. I'm so excited to be here. This is just going to be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a lot to talk about because
Let's
we want to
unpack it.
hear,
Yeah.
we want to know what was going on in 10-year-old Shandy's mind before, during, and after that event. And then we'll get to what you're doing now and how
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
pouring back into others. But tell us about what life was like at 10 years old.
It's quite interesting when I reflect back. I actually did have a great childhood. I did. I had loving parents, like it was mentioned. I had a brother, I had the dog, I had the cat, and the childhood that most would dream of. But what we didn't have were conversations about mental health. And we didn't have conversations about, and I certainly wasn't bringing it to the surface, how I felt about my looks. And even though I was loved, I don't think I was feeling it. And, you add in being a very impulsive kid. I don't think our brains are fully formed till roughly 24 years old. And so there was a lot of puzzle pieces that went into that day that at the time we just didn't know it. And so I sought out, trying to solve one of those puzzle pieces. And that was my how I felt about my looks. And like I said, I thought that by changing my hair, my mom would literally buy me a wig, and then that was my ticket to becoming pretty. And I
Okay,
think I
hold on.
was,
I have a
yeah,
couple questions.
yeah.
Um, I think we all have that bang story. Like, well,
Oh, yes,
like, oh dear, taking it into our hair and our bangs into
yes.
our own hands. So, were you experiencing any bullying at school? Is anybody talking about your looks in a way that made you feel a certain way, or was just this all internal battle?
Mainly internal. Yeah, in terms of my looks, I think the term is still used every once in a while of just, you know, the tomboy term. I was much more interested in forts and sports and, living that life than I was in Barbies and hair ties and that kind of thing. So maybe that played into how I felt, my own natural interests. But I think most of it was just for whatever reason, I didn't like what I saw in the mirror and let that become bigger than it needed to be because
Okay.
yeah, later in life I really learned how to love myself, and that's a beautiful spot to be. I wish I could have given that to 10-year-old Shandy for sure.
Mm. Well, and when you think of it, I mean, I have an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I can't imagine them thinking negatively about themselves because I think they're so awesome. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And so to understand that this is not even an overt bullying or emotional abuse situation or put
right.
downs, it's internal comparisonitis where you're looking at others and saying, or maybe feeling a bit othered because you're not playing with Barbies, and I wasn't either. I loved He-Man and She-Ra. She-Ra was
Yes.
my girl. And so it's interesting to think about you internally noticing these things about your world and saying, I don't fit in here.
Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, you're spot on. And it's sad, but it's also it brings to light, the importance of having open dialogue with your kids, and that not even, I was going to say like open dialogue regarding mental health, but I really want to go bigger than that. Just open dialogue so that you can have hard and uncomfortable conversations, and that you allow a space and a
Yeah.
home for kids to feel and express how they're feeling. I heard something just this morning on a podcast. I thought it was great. It was along the lines of, you can feel what you are feeling. You may not act what like how you act on that is the difference. And isn't that so true?
I heard this last night. I work with trauma and trafficking survivors as well. And so this podcast basically said they were talking about a time when a girl was violated and she didn't say anything to anyone.
Mm,
And the doctor said, "What does your brain like what did not your heart, but what is your brain?
yeah.
Why would your brain say not to tell?" And basically, it was this. The idea was I didn't feel safe enough to tell,
Yeah, that
and he
Maslow's
said
hierarchy. Yeah. Hmm.
that's the trauma.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, being violated is a trauma, and if you can talk about it and resolve it more quickly, it doesn't have to stay
Yeah.
lingering in your system. And so it was a fascinating conversation. I think we'll kind of do another podcast on it. The idea that uh, the fact that she didn't feel comfortable talking about it was part of the trauma too.
Mm,
But I think about that as a mom. I think I'm approachable, right? I think I'm open and all of these things, but
mm.
that doesn't mean they do. So I think it's fascinating to think through this on both sides.
Yeah, it kind of I too am a mom to almost 15-year-old boys. And I think sometimes we forget, it's like love languages. We tend to communicate in a love language that we value,
Yeah.
that we interpret. When the reality is, if you're really wanting to communicate love, it needs to be in a way that your kid or your spouse or the person you're trying to communicate love to values,
Yeah.
appreciates.
And
There's a
here's it.
big difference there.
Yeah.
So same with you and I feel like we're approachable, of course, right? We've done our best to foster that environment when sometimes, that becomes reality for that child, right? Or our children when they're
Right.
talking to us. So the village mentality is important for sure.
So, all right. So the idea here is that this is not necessarily even a bullying situation. This is
No, right.
internally, own
Yeah.
internal dialogue saying you're not good enough. Okay, so you're like, spiraling a bit. You're thinking these negative thoughts, even as a 10-year-old. And, the concrete answer is to fix it by cutting your hair. Keep going with your story. What's next?
Yeah, so that backfired, and again, there was a lot going on that went into trying to check the box of feeling pretty. Again, an undetected mental health issue, a very impulsive kid, combined with a very bad day. I was loved, wasn't feeling loved, but the avenue, the lane I'm in right now is trying to fix being pretty. And again, a very adolescent mind of 10 years old. So when I cut the hair, it was to make room for a wig. So this was a very drastic haircut. I mean, shy of, I didn't buzz cut it by any means, but it was as close to that as
It wasn't just bangs.
it was not good. It was not good. And so my mom is this amazing person who is a giver, right? Like you and I, and she was giving into her career and was at the hospital as a nurse, and I was supposed to help out at our family owned hardware store. And so I had this your mom is your hero, right? For many people. And I had this expectation that she was just gonna take me to the neighboring town and we would buy this wig and everything would be good to go. And this would be perfect because it'd be right before fifth grade started. And instead, she was at work and my dad came home to see what I was up to. And I think he reacted like most dads would react. Like, what in the world did you do to your hair? His baby girl all of a sudden like demolished part of her physical identity and did not have the reaction that I felt I needed at the time, had a much stronger reaction. And at the end of the day, it ended up not being about that. That just happened to be the icing on the nasty cake that was being developed. And so I saw no way out. I didn't. I wish I would have used any sort of pause or deep breath or coping strategy or reached out or the blinders were up. There was no altering what I was going to do next. I had not premeditated it. And I just, by the grace of, I think it's okay to say my God or the God that I worship. I respect other religions though, so I want to be careful there. But when I did fire that rifle, at the very last second, I think I maybe fell asleep in anatomy class, and that benefited me because I did the whole mirror effect and I switched which side of my chest that was on. And so I'm very blessed. Even though I did pull the trigger, I somehow survived, and my mom came and found me and somehow was saved from a medical scientific standpoint and a spiritual standpoint. And I'm here having this conversation with you. So yeah, I'm very blessed to be here.
Wow. How long were you on the ground before you were found, do you know?
We estimate, I don't know, say just, with blood loss and passing out multiple times, I would say 15-ish minutes. My mom came home from work early that day and she
Wow.
happens to have this medical background, right? And she stayed in nurse mode and didn't go into mom freak out mode. And then my dad, like very heroic, like, literally swooped me up and took me to the hospital. And it was during that time that I realized like how precious this thing called life is, and that exactly how loved I actually was and am loved. And man, then it was like I was groveling for my life the moment I did it. And so I share that when I'm on stage because and I've talked with people who've attempted to take their lives, and thankfully it did not go all the way through. So the moment they and I attempted, it went from, wanting to die, AKA wanting the pain to end, to a millisecond shifting of all I want is to live. All I want is to live. And
Mhm.
so then it became like fighting to survive. And I'm very blessed with a team of medical professionals in my small town and medical professionals in the next neighboring town and Aeromed and my mom
Okay.
and my dad and my brother being,
Did they hear? No, but it sounds like nobody heard it.
yeah, no one was home.
Okay.
So yeah,
And then how long were you at the hospital?
Um, I think it was about a 2 week stay after the what I consider to be life-saving surgery. It was about a 2 week stay and then about 2 weeks at home. So I started fifth grade late. I didn't make it to my first day of fifth grade with my awful new
Did you
haircut.
ever get a wig?
No, that's not how life works.
Thing.
We have to face those demons, so to speak. So when things are hard, leaning into them is something I really preach to my own kids of get comfortable being uncomfortable because you have to tackle the why behind those things. But yeah, no wig. And just very blessed to be here. But then came the wrath of it all and the fall down and how you mentioned it was written up in the local paper as an accidental shooting.
Is that what your parents thought, or did they know the truth?
Well, they knew the truth. I think it was easier to let the other story be the one that got aired.
Yeah.
So, and also, I believe it was written in the paper as a result of what was written up in the police report.
Okay.
So, right. So, I think a 10-year-old in this moment is trying anything to make this pain go away, not just for myself, but for my family and my community and our village of people who loved me dearly. I didn't want them to feel the pain that I was feeling. So, I presumably was telling white lies, even though if you were really close to us, you knew the truth. And my parents knew the truth. This mental health wasn't even a term. This
Yeah.
is,
Well,
this
and I
is,
was just thinking the truth matters here because it matters on what we do next, right? If this is an
right,
accident, we go back to life as normal, like, oh, whoops, let's lock up the guns, let's make sure this doesn't happen again. But if they truly understand the turmoil you were experiencing, my hope is that then you got some help.
right. So I am proud of my parents for acknowledging the truth, even if it was behind closed doors, and with me and with only close friends or family, because they did take me to a counselor. But
Good.
this was during a time, what I remember anyway, was that my parents had to be in the same space, in the same room as the counselor, and I wasn't ready or willing to have many conversations with that setup. I think it just needed time and the industry to grow and the research to be done. And so, literally, fast forward, um, I'm 10 years older, so 20-ish years old, and this is now and I'm in my college years and I study abroad in Spain. And while I'm there, I'm mugged and 9/11 happened. And it was the first time that I acknowledged or was made aware of that the whole world doesn't love Americans. They don't put us on this pedestal that I think I grew up believing. And so my return to the United States was actually pretty rough. My reentry was like, whoa, there's a lot of trauma to unpack there. And thankfully, the mental health industry had come a long way. And at my college, which is local here, Aquinas College, a good friend of mine who helped save me in the middle of the mugging, mind you, she was with me, and who was with me. I think it's called trauma bonded through 9/11 while being abroad. She was like, hey, there's this thing called a counselor. Her name is Pam, and she's across campus, and you can go for free, and she'll literally listen to you, and she can't tell anyone anything. And I said, what? She's like, it is amazing. And I said, huh, okay. And that is where my therapy started in my young 20s and did the deep, dark, hard, amazing, rewarding work of 10 years of therapy. And then I kind of graduated, and then I still do what I call maintenance therapy today. I have an appointment today. I just kind of go as needed. So that was a beautiful journey to, even though I didn't get there because of the suicide attempt, I got there. I arrived to those doorsteps as a result of something else.
Yeah.
And then in that very first appointment, she was a beautiful listener, and she acknowledged, she was like, this is not going to be a short-term relationship. And I was like, oh, okay.
You're gonna be here
So
a while.
we're gonna be here a little bit. So
But I think that happens a lot, especially in our youth. We don't know how to even process through
mm-mm.
this, right? Like we compartmentalize, we don't quite fully understand. Our world is so small when we're a kid that it makes sense to me that it would take another trauma to trigger some of those initial,
Yeah.
they say your body keeps the score, right? So it's stuffed in there until we start to process it. But I appreciate that you were able to go there so quickly with her rather than, meeting for 6 months and being like, actually, there's more, because I think that
Yeah.
speeds up your process too.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of did the before, we did a little bit of the during and a little bit of after. Do you want to know how I ended up on stage speaking about
Well,
it?
yeah, I think that's the next step, right? Because it's and what I find, I work with a lot of different coaches, right? And oftentimes people become a coach or they want to add value in a new way because of something that they've experienced.
Mm,
They are 3 steps ahead, they've gone through their own healing journey, and they're like, I want to help somebody who is just like me.
hmm
And so they look back, and it sounds like you've done something similar. We've created a nonprofit, you said, called Embracing Perfections, where you speak at local school assemblies and in corporate settings to bring to light the inner struggles of kids and the conversation of mental health. So, but I know it also said you were in the corporate world for a while. So tell me a little bit about that
Yeah.
transition.
So after college, I ended up, climbing that corporate ladder, working my tail off to become a leader that people would follow, right? And that we would go after common goals and have fun. And it was in the fitness world. So it was really great. And in that time, met, my hubby and had my boys. And I was actually at a leadership conference for growth and development. Um, and I listened to this beautiful speaker named John O'Leary, and he was just launching his first book called On Fire. And the amount of parallels that that gentleman and I have in common, it was one of those like serendipitous moments in life where you're supposed to be right where you're at because of what is being laid out in front of you. And we just had so much in common. And here I am, just crying my eyes out, feeling all the feels among 12 coworkers that have no idea what my story is because I wasn't sharing it yet. And his call to action was very powerful to me. And it was, people, if you're not sharing your God-given story with the world, get out of your own way and work through whatever is stopping you. We need you to do exactly that. And I was like, oh, but in my mind, I'm rocking this career. I am loving being a mom and I'm loving accomplishing. My life is great. But I think we all know when we have that gut feeling of you're missing something here. You have more to do and there are other callings. It's okay for your calling and your why to change. And in that moment, I allowed the onion layers to peel back to truly what needs to happen next in order for me to feel like I can actually truly turn a tragedy into someone's roadmap to success. And so you're correct. It was in that moment. I literally flew home the next day and scheduled a business meeting with my husband. And I said, I have to share my story. My life cannot move on if I don't share my story in hopes to prevent this pain in other people. And that we truly can embrace our imperfections. And when we acknowledge that, man, can we do amazing things. And so not talking about mental health and not talking about suicide didn't get it, doesn't get us anywhere. And so, yeah, I literally quit my career, which I loved, to do a big pivot. Um, to sharing it. And so far, it's landed me on, and that's why I have this background for those of you that can see this versus just hear this. Behind me is a gymnasium, and I loved and still love the game of basketball. My career, my office was outside a basketball court. And I loved playing at the collegiate level, and I love everything and the people that I've, you know, been blessed to interact with as a result of this game. And I find it quite interesting that now I speak right to students, middle school students and high school students in many gymnasiums. And it's been a common thread, and it's been beautiful. So I instead of going, you know, a one-time recording or this or that, I speak at middle schools and high schools in front of students, sharing my story and giving really hopefully life-saving advice where they're listening and ready to know that they can seek out help and it's okay to not feel okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea, right, of this too shall pass. Like you said, in one moment you were saw no way out, and then the next moment you were like begging for your life. I love your idea here about a semicolon. It says
Yes,
the
yes.
power imbued in a semicolon. It's just shy. Just a shy little bit of punctuation, but it speaks volume, surfacing in recent years to serve as a metaphor for what's next and what else. For Shandy, the semicolon is a wake-up call for us all to mold the positive ways in which we can all move forward. So, do you incorporate the semicolon into your speaking? Tell me a
Oh,
little bit about
yes.
what that means to you.
Yes, I love the semicolon movement. Check it out online. I think it's a beautiful analogy that instead of, when you're sharing your story or when you're going through hard things in life, instead of using a period, it is a small little piece of grammar, but it's so powerful, right? That your story can continue, your sentence can continue, and the sentence is your life. And so I since have put it physically on my body in a tattoo format. The teenagers think I'm pretty cool because of that, apparently. I put it right below the scar on my shoulder, and it's incorporated into my logo. And it's true. That's not to take away from how you're feeling, though. I think it's important to, if we rush through how we're feeling about something versus addressing it, acknowledging it, and like sitting in the yuck, I think we're missing an opportunity there. So, yes, we need to get through stuff, but I think it's okay to feel those feelings and process those feelings in a healthy way, right? And then we have the semicolon as a voice of hope for us that we can continue. We are resilient. We are amazing humans, and we're meant to do this thing called life, even if it's yucky.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said is really important because it's both and. As a therapist, there's a time and a season to talk through the hard stuff. Like you cannot stuff it. It literally doesn't work.
Correct.
It will come out somehow.
Yes, it
Whether
will.
you're spewing on someone else or you're internally, going through it, at some point you do need to process through that pain and bring the darkness to light, right?
Ah,
And we don't need to live there. So, like,
correct.
there's this balance of, all right, we got to process through the pain, but we also want to start redreaming, right? We also want to
Yes.
start thinking about what's next. We also want to start really identifying what do I want life to look like? And so I love that you've encapsulated both because I think both are an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I really love the quote, hold on to hope, even if you have to pretend. I promise one day you won't have to pretend anymore.
Mm.
So, yeah, you are, yes.
So at your, I'm sure, I mean, storytelling is such a great way to give lessons too. So I'm sure that part of the speaking is just really sharing your story because people start seeing you or seeing themselves in your story. I mean, I remember being in middle school. I lived in
Right.
Detroit area, and so I was like the only one with blonde hair,
Mm.
and I got blonde jokes, for a while. And those things, when you're already insecure, it doesn't take much to kind of push you over the edge. So I can imagine kids seeing themselves in your story. The other thing that I think is really relatable is that it isn't just this huge traumatic, rock bottom of a moment. It was your own inner dialogue.
Mm,
And I think
mhm.
that's really relatable too, because not everybody has, a huge trauma story and they can, and those are important to share as well. And it's also what are we telling ourselves and what are, the inner space that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think that's a relatable piece of your story that people don't hear very often.
Yeah, your mind and your heart are very powerful things, and be nice to it, right? And the other puzzle pieces matter. Self-care, I think, it's pretty common to hear that people think self-care is going and getting massages and having trips and this and that, when the reality is it's getting in nature, listening to music, being kind to yourself, your inner dialogue, your inner coach, who you surround yourself with. Those main five people are very powerful, right? And also, I think I think we are born to give. And when we give, we do receive. So bucket filling, that's actually a part of my nonprofit as well. It's a homegrown initiative where we come alongside of schools that have our peer listening groups that we sponsor, and we give an opportunity for students who wouldn't have the means to otherwise bucket fill for a student that, say, is going through a hard time or lost their dog. Or recently we had some house fires. And so bucket filling is, I think, something we're called to do in life. And so, yeah, anyway, I'm off in the weeds there, but I think you know where I'm going, that that inner dialogue is important. Be
It
kind
takes you
to yourself.
somewhere, right? Whether you like it or not. And so if you're not
Yeah,
intentional about where your inner dialogue is taking you, it's going to take you off into the weeds. Um,
yeah, and you have to work at it, right?
Intentional.
If you're not following or working with a coach, I love that you're a coach. I think we all need a coach and we
Yeah.
all need a counselor, and we need to be filling our bucket with the Simon Sinek's, the Mel Robbins, the Brene Browns of the world. What they are putting out into the universe is meant for you to consume and to maybe fill in where you
Yeah.
didn't quite get your network just right, or you're trying to heal, or whatever it is. We gotta do work, right? And then on ourselves and that inner dialogue, and then put what we put into the world, be the positive light, because we need that. It's true. We need to do those things.
When I used to work with those diagnosed with depression, and giving back was a coping skill that we'd put on their list. It
Amen.
was like, all right, what can you do that brings you joy? Knitting, going for a walk, all of these kinds of things, journaling, drinking your water, exercising, but giving back and
Mm,
finding a place to volunteer or working with kids who are, when you're an adult, working with younger ones, all of those things bring you joy. And if it's not on your calendar consistently, it probably isn't going to happen. And so we would work together to find places to give back. And it really was like a part of that healing journey. And then the other thing you said, and I want to hear about both of these programs you kind of just dropped on us, bucket
yes.
filling, and then also peer listening. I'm like, wait a minute, you're teaching people how to listen? What?
Yeah.
Like,
What?
this is absolutely a skill that everybody needs, and especially to learn it so young.
Yeah.
I
So
think it's really
yeah,
cool. So
it's
tell us about both of those.
okay. So I look at embracing imperfections. We have three nets. The largest net are assemblies, right? We want to wake up and have the conversation because suicide is preventable. Let's know our resources of 911. Let's say something when we are not well, and let's be a good listener when our friend is not well, and be aware. The next net is our peer listening group sponsorship. So we partner with Hope Squad. You can check them out. I believe in what they do. I don't get paid to say this. I literally eat, breathe, bleed for Hope Squad. It's hopesquad.com. You can start a peer listening group in your school. And what it is, essentially, here's the best part. We in the suicide prevention world have been getting it wrong for years. And the number one thing that I feel that we've been getting wrong, because newsflash, it's the second leading cause of death for young people, which is just heartbreaking. But the number one thing we've been getting wrong is not involving that age group. They
Mm.
have the power to be a great listener. They are already listening to their peers who are struggling. And so, what Hope Squad does really well is not only is it evidence-based curriculum and processes, what they do really well is the initial process. When you have a Hope Squad launching at your school, the kids that end up on the Hope Squad team, on the peer listening team, are nominated in because they are a great listener, not because they're Mr. or Mrs. Popular or the best athlete or the one that's on stage in the main role in the play or the conductor of the band. No, they are voted in because they are a great listener. It could be a D student is one of the best Hope Squad advisors or students, right? So you're covering all social economical backgrounds and all different social groups. And while they are there to be a peer listener, it's so much more, right? It's leadership development. The suicide prevention world isn't just it. It's multifaceted, right? Your culture at your school matters. Your leadership growth and development opportunities matter. What initiatives you put into the school year from student generated ideas matter. So that's the medium net is we sponsor peer listening groups. I would like to offer that sponsorship to any school I speak at. And then the smaller net is what we were just talking about. It's small, but it's mighty. And we call it our Bryce Bucket program in honor of a gentleman that lost his battle to depression. And at the end of the day, when someone is felt they are seen and heard and noticed, and other people can walk alongside of them, beautiful things can happen. And so what it essentially is the Hope Squad kids nominate someone who's struggling. I mean, it could be as extreme as they lost a parent or a loved one, or they just got out of a 2-week stay at here in Michigan, it'd be like Pine Rest or Forest View, or it could be they're just having a bad day. It might actually be the A student and the star athlete that got their first A minus and they're having a hard time dealing with that. And so we meet them where they're at. And these students acknowledge that and nominate them in an anonymous fashion. And we come alongside of them with our volunteer group and we get a personalized gift and a handwritten note to remind them that they do matter and that they do have purpose, even if they can't see it. And that we're just thinking of them and we hope for one moment in their day and in their yuck that they can smile.
Wow, that's beautiful for
Yeah.
both the giver and the receiver.
Yes. I love that you encourage your clients to give because it's just amazing what happens and on the receiving end of people who are giving. Mhm.
During the COVID years, we needed to get out of the house, and it was kind of hard to volunteer because, COVID, they don't want random people coming in.
This
Uh,
thing.
and sometimes it's just hard to volunteer anyway. Like you need background checks and there's a
Mm.
ton of stuff, like hoops to go through. So we found two places local to us
Mm.
that would let us volunteer. One was our breeder, so our dog breeder. I
Mhm.
called her and said, "Can we like come pick up poop in your yard or something? Like we need something on our calendar." Said, "Okay." She said, "Why don't you come and clean our barn?" So once a month, my boys and I would go clean her barn, and our
Love,
reward was to like play with the puppies that were there.
love. That's
And then
great.
there's also a what's it called? It's called a food bank, like a mile down the road. And my son's second grade class went there to volunteer during second grade, and he said, "Mom, we got to go back." So we started going to the community basket, a couple times a year. It wasn't a ton, but there's just something about having something like that consistently on your calendar,
Mm.
that blesses both us and them.
Amen. Amen. And I love that you chose to do that as a family. I think that's so special. It's not what you say. What's that saying? It's not what you say, it's not what you do. It's how you make people feel. And your children saw what you chose to do, say, feel that day was very intentional to giving to others. That's beautiful.
And
Mhm.
the other thing I was going to add, okay, so peer listening. Again, number one, you're teaching people listening skills, which like everybody needs, right? But
Yes.
number two, you're helping, they're like, I want to say like a third ear, like you start hearing differently when you're being trained to hear.
Mhm.
And what we know is that when kids are going through a hard time, they will confide in their friends before their parents. And so teaching kids how to be that kind of third ear to listen for that. My one of my friends was trafficked in fourth grade through eighth grade, and the person she told first was her friend.
Her friend, of
And the
course.
friend did the right thing, and the friend told her mom, and then that,
Mhm.
it went from there. But that's something we talk about a lot is actually training the kids, or at least having them be aware
Yes.
this is a possibility and what to do when it happens.
Yeah, because it's already happening. And that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing that friends are confiding in their friends, right? It's when it's too big,
Yeah.
right, that they may need to seek out help. And I think people are like, well, why would they confide in their friend if they're one of the labeled peer listeners? Well, at the end of the day, research shows people don't actually want to die. They want to treat the pain. And
Yeah.
if they could get a little help in that process, maybe we can start to shift those numbers where it's no longer the second leading cause of death.
I also think that sometimes it's easier to talk to people you don't totally know. Like
Yes.
that's why counselors are great. They're not in your world. You're not going to run into them at church. That's why I love our 90-day U-turn programs, people all over the country. We connect each week. We walk through these skills and develop these skills together. And it's like it's a safe place because they're not in your world.
They're not your circle. It's a
Yeah.
safe, confidential,
Yeah.
listening ear that, some talk therapy, it's there for a reason. It is
Yeah.
there for a reason. And so I'm very passionate about working with a coach and or counselor so that you can have that avenue. And I truly believe we're getting there where it's no longer taboo because people are missing out on big, uh, amazing things that life has to offer. And a simple puzzle piece to that, oh, maybe not simple, but a puzzle piece to that could be a coach or a counselor just doing a little shift in
Yeah.
your head. Sometimes this is a complicated place, and sometimes we just need a little redirect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and life's happening for all of us, right? Like we all
Yeah.
need a place to talk about life, regardless of what's happening. Like we all need it because very rarely does someone say, "How are you?" and have the space to listen.
That's powerful, Denise. Yes.
All right, so I am going to put your websites everywhere, embracingimperfections.org. You guys, especially if you're in the Michigan area, I'm sure you speak anywhere. People are willing to bring you
Yes. I,
in.
I do primarily speaking in Michigan, but I'll fly anywhere. And at the end of the day, if schools or the professionals that are making this decision whether to have me or not, I just really want to encourage them that opening the conversation saves lives. Not talking about it doesn't. And so I don't leave schools with 1,000 crying kids because I don't think we get anything done. And dare I say, we actually have a little fun. So I really think having the conversation and giving the tools is what matters. It's a myth that talking about suicide causes it, but for some reason people still tend to believe that. And that's still part of the stigma that's hurting us to this day. So I really want to encourage anyone to get me in contact with their school professionals and just know they may have a moment of like, whoa, wait, yeah, when the reality is giving them the tools and talking about it can absolutely save a life.
Well, and I think I think like it feels to me like this should be standard across all schools, right?
Amen.
And I know in our school they have what's called shape class,
Mm.
where my son is like, "Oh, they made us journal again," and I'm like, "Woo!" But what was so funny is this is just an example of how this stuff gets internalized in a child who hears it at school.
Mm.
So my son, one time I was on a call. I do a lot of evening calls like this, right? And I went outside after the call, and he raked up a pile of leaves and brought my dog out there, and they were like jumping in the leaves.
I love
And
it.
he talked about how at school during the shape class, they like said something about having fun or playing with your dog or like something like that, and it sparked this idea in him that he should go, and he was out there laughing and having fun, and he said to me, "It works." And I thought,
You're like, wow.
okay, so they are listening, they are internalizing it, and they're
Yes.
making choices because of what they're learning. And so
Hmm.
it's not just about like, yes, it's about the suicide awareness, like what do you do when you have those thoughts? It's also about living a life you love and having the coping skills and the emotional space to be able to get help if you need it.
Being intentional about what you're doing with your time. It is this thing called life is precious, it's absolutely precious. And I I don't know if this is a redirect, but I have to say I'm soon to have my boys read The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. It's technically, yeah, it is technically written for adults. I
Mhm.
I wish this was a prerequisite to life
Yeah.
for for everyone, because so many of us allow I guess this is where my brain was triggered from what you said. So many of us allow other comments, good or bad, affect us deeply, right? And so I really think it's important to be a consumer of the education around us and the tools around us. And Mel Robbins, while we'll likely never meet, she has given this world a gift, and it is the let them theory. And it's not, yes, it's about let them, because we can't control how other people are going to act, what they're going to say, what they're going to do. What we can control is how we react. So it's really about let me, right? Let them, but let me.
Yeah.
And let me is that pause, that deep breath. Because, like think about it, us parents who have that quick reaction and we're barking, who ends up looking like the fool, right? It's not the innocent child that was just processing whatever it was. It's us that barked. So the let them theory is such a powerful tool for corporate world, coaching world, the friendship world. And it was the leaf example, those things we throw into the universe to our children, they are listening,
They
and
are
it
listening.
matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. All right. Well, this was a powerful conversation. Thank you, Shandy, for sharing your story and for having the courage to say
Mm,
yes to the spark that God gave you. And it
amen.
doesn't sound, and maybe this isn't true, I don't know, but sometimes I know for me, when I feel that nudge, it can sometimes take years for
Yeah.
us to say yes, right? Sounds like you said yes and you figured it out along the way and you're doing it. So, congratulations on embracing imperfections and all the good work you're doing into the world. You guys, if you are a teacher, or you've got connections to teachers, or you've got kids, go to embracingimperfections.com, share the website and in this podcast with your school administrator, and let them know that Shandy is available to speak to your kids, and tell them about the Hope Squad too. I think that's a great
Yeah.
resource as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Denise.
All right, have a great, amazing day, you guys, and we'll see you. Oh wait, one last thing. One last aha moment I had, and then I'll close for real.
Yes.
I was just thinking, as you were talking about the let them theory, is how important it is it for us to continue to grow as parents
Mm,
so we can overflow into our kids. So
yeah.
while we want to give our kids all of these tools, we need them too. So as adults, you guys, don't forget to continue to grow yourself. All right. Have an awesome day, you guys. We'll see you next time.